Okay, so today we're going to go over the process of getting the narrative, quest, and dialogue system set up to work with QuestMap Pro. So I've got a written version of this tutorial already. This video will be added in here once it is done. The written version is quite long, so I expect this video to end up being quite long as well. It's a pretty detailed process, but that's because we're going to go through the steps of recreating the entire demo quest line in narrative. So we're just going to quickly play through that demo quest line so you can see what it's like before, and then after we'll have the comparison. So if we hit play, this might be a little bit loud. We go through, we open the spawn container and that triggers the first quest, which takes us over to this area. And if we hold control, we can see that we are looking for the berry farm. Now, obviously this UI that's here will be going away because narrative has its own UI system, but we'll go through that in a minute. So if we follow the quest trail, we're going to this location. Once we cross over the entrance here, that's going to advance the quest, which then has us now collecting berries. So we go up to the berries, we get between 1 and 4 berries per bush. So we just collect all our berries, and that goes to the next stage, which is to put the berries on the pallet behind the farmhouse. So we do that, and now we have no quest marker. If you look at the map, there is nothing on here telling us where to go. But the quest description says cross the bridge. So we look at the map, we can see there's a bridge here, so that's where we're going. So we can even set that as a waypoint. And now we're going to there. So let's just follow the road along and cross the river. And once we cross the bridge, we're going to have a little update here, which is to find the enemy leader and deal with the enemies. So let's go over, and so when we stand right next to the leader, they're all just going to die. So they're all dead. And if we keep going, now we need to find the buried crate in the red forest. This one here is another quest area one, so we can see there's an area marked on the map. So let's just keep going towards that. Once we get in the quest area, we need to find the buried crate, which is over here. We interact with that, and now it tells us to go to the beach. We could walk all the way back along there, or we could just fast travel to the beach and walk forward. And now the quests are over. So that is the quest line that we're looking to recreate in narrative. So let's get a start on that. Just before I go any further into this video, I do want to take a moment and just say that this video, as well as any other integration videos, should not be considered endorsements of the products I am covering. They are done based on customer and community demand. For narrative in particular, it seems like a pretty good system. I've only had a very limited time with it. I will say, however, that the documentation I find to be quite lacking. It's very brief getting started written documentation that at the bottom says once narrative is released, this documentation will be expanded upon. Narrative has been out for over a year, and that does not seem to have been expanded upon. So I'm not sure if there is a link that has not been updated or what's going on there. The creator does also have a 1.5 or 2 hour video that doesn't have great chaptering or anything like that. So I don't think that's particularly great because you have to sit there and work through a video that doesn't seem to cover everything, or at least if it does, it's very hard to find the spot in the video. So I would say documentation is a weak point of the system. Functionality seems pretty good. I did have a couple of bugs when working with it that just went away when I restarted the editor. So if you're seeing things that don't seem to make sense, I would say just restart Unreal and see if that fixes it. The creator does have a Discord you can jump into. I have heard that he's a little bit hard to get a hold of for support. I also did email him a couple of times about stuff to do with narrative, but it wasn't support per se, so I am only going on by what other people say. If you are someone that finds that you have trouble learning marketplace systems, maybe take that into account before making the plunge on narrative. Just jump in the Discord, see if you can get an answer from people, that sort of thing. So the first thing we want to do is we just need to go through and do some preliminary steps to prepare the project, which involves just making sure narrative is enabled and removing all that UI that we saw. So if we jump into plugins, you want to go to quests and dialogue, and you want to just make sure narrative is enabled. I've already got it. You'll need to click this and then restart the engine. So do that and then jump back in here. Then we want to go to our demo controller. So again, this is going to be using the demo quests here. I would encourage you to follow along with the demo project so you get a feel for how it all works, and then you can apply that to your own project. So we're going to jump into this demo controller here, and we're going to add the narrative component to the controller. So if we just click the add button, search for narrative, and add narrative component. And that doesn't really have any settings, that's just there to facilitate narrative. Hit compile and save, and then we want to go through and find any references to the demo UI so we can deal with them. So let's start down here. We've got this one here, which is basically just doing a pop-up in the top corner that says you discovered this landmark. However, I'm just going to remove all of these because we don't really need the print strings either. These are just examples. So you can just disconnect this one if you want, but I'm just going to delete the whole thing. Next, we need to find the quit event, which is escape somewhere. Zoom out and we'll find it, maybe down here. Here we go. So this one here, again, you can just disconnect that if you want, or you could also just disconnect there. I'm just going to delete the whole thing, just so it's a little bit easier. Beyond that, we need to find the add info here. So this one here, this adds the UI itself, so we're going to delete that one as well. We're going to delete this one down here, which is the update quest description. That does what it sounds like. It updates the description in the UI. And we're going to remove this lot here. We need to keep this one, but we'll remove all that. So all we've got in this box now is just these two nodes. Beyond that, we need to find the left control one, which is here. And this one toggles the HUD, so we can delete that entirely. And I think that's it. Just looking at my notes. No, we have to jump into here. So we've got this one here, demo add info. We've already deleted that function, so we just delete that node and reconnect them. And then we're all good. That's all the stuff we need to remove. So next we need to add the narrative UI itself. Because narrative has its own quest journal sort of UI. We're going to add that to it. So if we drag off here and we go create widget, and just drag this up, and we want to select the narrative default UI, BP underscore narrative default UI. We want to feed it a reference to the narrative component, and then we want to drag off the return value and go add to viewport. Well, we want to create a new event up here. So add custom event, and we're going to call it something like start quest line. Off of here, we want to use a reference to the narrative component and then go begin quest. So this is how we're going to actually trigger the initial phase of the quest. Now we don't actually have a quest made, so let's do that. So we open up the content browser. I'm just going to create a new folder here for narrative stuff specifically. And in here, we're going to right click, we're going to go to narrative, and we're going to hit quest. And we'll call this something like demo quest. We're not going to do anything with that right now, so we'll just hit save. We're going to select it in here so that when we do stuff, it's all good. I think that's all we have to do for that. We also want to enable fast travel. So by default, fast travel is disabled in the demo until you start the quest. So we want to get a reference to the Quest Map Pro Manager, drag off it, and go enable fast travel. We want to use the set. Make sure that is set to enabled, and then just connect that up to here. So this is what's going to fire off when we escape that spawn container. So let's jump into the spawn container, which is going to be under Quest Map, Demo, Blueprints, and then it will be called BP Quest Map Pro Demo Spawn Container. In here, we want to find the Start Quest node, which is this one here. Delete that, which means we can also delete these reroute nodes. And instead, what we want to do... Nope, sorry, we need those reroute nodes. We're going to drag off there, and we want to call that new event we just made, so start quest line. And with that, we are ready to start making our quest. So let's open up our quest asset again. Demo quest, or open it up for the first time. And in here, we've got two graphs. We've got an event graph. I'm not using that for anything here. We want to use the quest graph instead. So this is where we're going to do most of our stuff. So we're going to give this quest a description. Let's just call it Quest Map Pro Demo Quest. And what we want to do on here is we want to create a new task for the player to do. So we need to create that task in narrative. So in our content browser, we're going to right click, we're going to go to narrative, and we're going to select task. I'm going to call this NT for narrative task and call it visit location. Now we don't need to open this up. These sort of just work as instructions. You don't really need to do anything with them. But now that we've created that, we can drag off of here and we can use this. And it says NT visit location, and we can use this as the task for this stage of the quest. So what we're going to do is we're going to select this and expand this task section, and you'll see it's got some details in here. So it's asking for the location name. Now the first task in the quest is to visit the berry farm, so we're just going to write berry farm. We only want the player to do it once, and we don't need to worry about any of these other bits here. Now the task description and the description, I don't know if this will start off the bat. No, yeah, it should do, I think. We might get some errors here. If I open this, okay, so we see the text up here, right? To describe what the player needs to do to complete this task. So that is the description, that is the top line. So we're going to say here, visit the berry, or find the berry farm. The task description is the small bullet point underneath, so we're going to say something like follow the navigation trail. And that's pretty easy. So now we've got that very initial stage set up. What we want to do is we want to open up the trigger that is at the farm entrance and have it complete this task. So once again, if we jump into the demo folder blueprints, we've got these triggers here. We've got trigger farm. Open that one up. And in here, we can actually delete all of this stuff. This is all tied to the current quest system, so we can get rid of that. And we can use a node called get narrative component. Off of here, we want to do complete narrative task. And we're going to select the task. We're going to select the visit location one we just made, and we're going to give it the location name of Berry Farm. So what's going to happen, if we minimize this, the player spawns over here. When we open the spawn container, as you saw, it started the first quest. It's going to expect the player to go along just like we did in the demo, and when it hits this trigger right here, which is the farm trigger, it's going to complete the task that we're waiting for, which will advance to the next stage of the quest. So that's exactly what we want. We can close this trigger up now, and that's actually the quest part done. However, right now, if we fire it up, there's no markers, there's no waypoint, there's no trail, anything like that. So we've created the quest within narrative. We haven't set it up to talk to Quest Map Pro. So the way we can do that, we jump into our content browser, we're going to create what is called a narrative event. So we right click here and we go to blueprint class and we click on this all classes arrow, and in here we search for narrative and we want to select narrative event. Hit select. Give it a name, so I'm going to call it NE for narrative event, and we're going to call this one add quest marker. If we open this up, there's nothing in here, but what we want to do is we want to go to functions, hover over it, and you'll see this override option. We need to override both execute event and get graph display text. In get graph display text, all that's going to do is change what's written on here when we add the event to it. So we're going to give this the text of add a quest marker. That's all we need to do for that. In execute event, we're going to break this and put this up here for now. What we want to do in here is we're going to drag off the controller and we're going to use a interface message from Quest Map Pro. So we're going to look for get quest map manager and make sure we select message. And then off of the manager, we're going to drag and we're going to look for add quest. We can hook up the return node at the end here. And what we want to do is promote both of these to variables. So drag off location, hit promote to variable, and drag off quest data and hit promote to variable. Enable auto highlight, and that's all we need to do in here. Now, what this will do is in here where the quest start is, so the way narrative works, this is your task, this is the actual stage. So these two make the entire portion of the quest. This fires off when the task is activated, and this is what checks if the task is being done. So if we click on quest start, we can go down here into the details panel and find the events. We can click add to add a new event, and then in this drop down box, we can actually see the narrative event we created, which is any add quest marker. If we add that, we can then also expand this, and we can now see the variables that we created in here. So we're going to use the data from the demo to fill that out. So what we need firstly is the location. So if we jump into our controller and go to quest data, we can expand this out, and you can see all the information here for all stages of the quest. So we're just going to right click on quest location, click copy, go back into our quest, and click paste. Now we're going to call this demo quest. That's just the name of the marker on the map. We can leave the main quest location and area radius at default for this one. But that should have us having the first stage basically set up. There we go. We've got a marker, we've got the quest trail, and the marker is on the map. Now if we follow the trail along and go all the way to the farm entrance, we should be able to complete it. You can also see the UI is updated to the information we put into the description. Now nothing's really going to happen when we get here because we haven't set up the quest to complete. We're just completing this task. So in a minute when we walk over this, it should change. Yep. And there we go. We've completed. It's now green because it's completed. So that's the first stage set up. The next stage of the quest is the one where we've got to collect 15 berries, so let's jump into that. We can do more or less the same setup here. We've already got our add quest marker, so let's add that first. So this is going to be our next stage. Let's just update this to quest map pro demo quest. And we can just click an event, add quest marker. And we can do the same thing here. We can set the location and the details. So let's go back into the quest data here. I'm going to copy the location from stage 2. And we're going to take note that this one is an area quest with a radius of 2,000. So let's paste the location, call it demo quest. We'll set it to an area quest with a location of 2,000. And I think we're not going to playtest every single quest at every single stage of this, but just till we have the first 2 stages up and running, just want to show the flow of how that works here. So we're going to go over, activate the farm, and hopefully the UI won't update or anything like that, but we should see an area quest marker placed down. So let's just walk through here. Yep, there we go. We've got an area marker, and it's highlighting the area on the map. Cool, that's what we want. So now we need to create the task. Now obviously visit location is not going to work for this one, so we're going to create a new narrative task, and this one is going to be called NT get item. Same thing, we don't need to do anything with that. We might just save everything though in case the engine decides to crash. We're going to drag off of here and go NT get item. Space this out a bit nicer, and in here we want to add the item name of berry. We want to give get 15 berries, and we want to go through and just add some stuff here. So let's go for the description. We'll say harvest the berry bushes, and for this one we're going to say collect berries. So that is all good. We can now jump into our logic that deals with how the berries are added. Now that is actually in the controller. We want to find this add berries logic here, and we can delete almost all of this. So we're going to get rid of everything except for the berry count and this little bit here. That can all go. Now we're going to put that there, and we're going to actually change this a little bit just so that we have an extra check that we can use in the quest. We're going to promote this to a local variable, and we're going to call this new berries. So this is the amount of berries we're getting from this particular bush. And we're still going to add that to that. That's all fine. Just bring this in a little bit so it's a little bit more condensed. And then what we're going to do from there is we're going to get narrative. Oh, actually, we don't need to get narrative component. We'll drag off from here and we're going to go complete narrative task. However, the issue here is that we're going to only have that complete once. So obviously, if we are collecting, we're getting between 1 and 4 berries. So if we get 3 berries, we want this to complete 3 times. As far as I'm aware, there's no way in narrative to tell it to do this multiple times. I could be wrong. The documentation's a little bit limited on that. But the easiest way I found to do this is just to drag off here and use a for loop. Not for each loop, just for loop. For the first index, we want to set that to 1. And for the last index, we want to set that to new berries. Now we're going to place this into the loop body, and basically what will happen is this will go through, if new berries are set 3 times, it'll run this loop 3 times. So it'll add 3 of them. We want to set the task to get item, and we want to set the item name to berry. Just got a small edit here to make with this section. This bit here, we just need to change slightly. Basically, every time this random is called, it will give a different value. So we actually need not to have this hooked up here, but instead use new berries. So once that's done, it'll work fine. I think that is everything we need to do there. Yep, it is. So on this one, we can just go through and add the next event, just so when we test this for the last time before we go through the rest, we can see it update the marker. So we're going to grab the data for stage 3 from here. So copy the location. It is a location with an area of 0, so we can do that. Paste the location onto there. Call this demo quest. And just label that default. Okay, so this will be the last time we test the quests until we're done the rest of them. So I don't want this video to get super long. So we open the spawn container, we have the marker added. We follow this along, and as you can see, the marker's on the compass, so everything's working as intended here. Now when we cross over the farm, we should see the text for the quest change, and it should have a collect berries with a count. Yep. So if we go to here, we collect berries, we got 3. Got another 3, 1, 3, 3, and then 1 more, or 2 more, sorry. And that's told us, it's updated our marker. Now we haven't set up the next phase, but that's how we're going to go. So let's go through and create the rest of them now. Okay, so the next stage is to interact with the pallet. Now none of our tasks are really going to work for that, so we're going to create another task. Now we're going to end up reusing both of this one and the interact one. We won't reuse the get item, but you can see how that would be one that you might reuse. So we're going to call this one just interact. And we're going to go through, we're just going to change this to quest map pro demo quest. I think all this stuff is used for, there's like an actual journal in narrative that we're not going to touch today, but I think that's used for that. So we drag off here, we look for interact and space this out again. Same thing as normal, we want to give it a name, so we're going to use pallet in this case. Give it a description, place the berries on the pallet, and we'll say look for the look behind the farmhouse. And we're all good with that. Now we need to change the pallet to update that. So for this one here, the logic is actually inside of the pallet, I believe. So we're going to go into the demo blueprints folder and open up the berry palette. Now there's a couple of things in here we want to do. We want to remove this one here, the start quest, because that's the old quest system. We can get rid of those. And in here we want to do get narrative component. And do the same thing as normal, complete narrative task. Just going to leave it up here so it's not overlapping that. Select interact and set it to palette. We can compile and save, and that should be that stage of the quest done. So let's go through and let's add a, Oh, no, actually, once we're done this one, we don't want a new marker to spawn. So this stage of the quest is the one where it tells you to cross the river and you don't have a quest marker. So in this one, we need to actually create a new event, which is to clear the markers. So let's do that. Let's right-click, go Blueprint Class, type in Narrative, and select Narrative Event. Give it a name, NE Clear Quest Marker. And we're going to open that up. Same thing as before, we want to override both execute event and get graph display text. For get graph display text, we're just going to say clear the active quest marker. And in execute event, we're going to break this for now. And what we want to do here is more or less the same thing. Get quest map manager. And off of the manager, we just want to go remove quest add index. Jump back into our quests on this stage, which is after we complete the pallet, add an event, and use clear quest marker. We're going to just rename this to Quest Map Pro Demo Quest, just so it's a bit neater. And that is that stage then done. The next stage we want to do is completing the task of visiting the bridge as we cross the river. We can reuse our previous visit location task for this. So you can see once you start to build up a library of tasks, it gets really quick to make the quests. For this one, we're going to set the location name to bridge. And we're going to say cross the river is our primary objective. And the description is look for the bridge on the map. Now, once that is done, the marker has to then move to a AI character. So we're going to have to build a new event for that. But before we do that, we do need to make sure that the bridge overlap volume actually updates the quest. So we jump back into our demo blueprints and we find the trigger bridge. Same thing as before, more or less. We want to just delete all of this logic as that is no longer useful. And we want to go get narrative component. And we want to drag off here and say complete narrative task. Set it to visit location, set the location name to bridge. And now once we cross over this, that will complete the narrative task of visiting the location. Once we hit quest 4 or quest state 4, we need to create the new event for attaching markers to the AI. So first thing we want to do is create a new event. It's going to be very similar to the add quest marker, and we could just duplicate that one, but let's go ahead and create another one. So let's create a narrative event. Let's call it something like any add leader marker. So this is going to be very specific to this implementation of the quest. In a real project, you're probably going to have a much more dynamic event than this, but this will give you an idea of how to interact with things more. So let's override the two events. We're going to say add a quest marker to the bandit leader. And in the execute event, we're going to break this. Now on here, we need to do a couple of things. So we're going to use the controller. We're going to cast to the demo controller. Ideally, you would be using something like an interface event for this, but for the sake of time and this being a very specific implementation of quests, we're just going to use the cast, but please do avoid cast where you can. We're going to store this locally so we can use it in a second. It's going to call this something like local reference. And then off of that, we're going to trigger the make friendly function. So let's have a look at what that does. We go into here, make friendly. It gets all the enemies, it selects one of them to make some friendly, and then it runs make friendly in that actor. What that means is that one of the AI in the scene will be friendly, the others will not be. The friendly one is the one we're using as the leader. It then starts a check, which basically just looks to see if that actor is close enough to the player. If it is, then it kills all the AI. So we're going to use this local reference again, and we're going to get quest map manager, Make sure you select the message one. Hook that up to there, and then off of here we're going to use add quest. Now the trick here is that we don't care about the location. The location is going to be wherever our friendly actor is. In here though, we want to go make, and in fact we want to promote this to a variable, then disconnect it, hook this make up to it, and then we can split this and hook up this, this, and this. We want to leave the attached actor though, because that is the one that we're actually going to use from the controller. So if we drag off here, we can look for friendly, get friendly enemy, and we hook that in as our attached actor. Hopefully that makes sense. Make sure auto highlight is enabled and hook up your return node. But so it's going through, it's getting the controller, it's making one of the enemies in the scene friendly. That's our leader. It's then going to use that friendly enemy as the point for where the quest is attached to. Hit compile and save. We can close that. In quest state 4, we want to add an event. Add leader marker to the events, and then we won't have the location here. We just have this. So let's call this demo quest. Let's set this to attached, and that is all we need to do. Okay, the next thing we need to do is add a new task for killing the leader. So let's create a new narrative task. We're going to NT kill enemy. So this could be a generic task you use. You might have a quest where it's killed 20 enemies or something like that. You could use this for that. I'm going to drag off here, go kill enemy. And we're going to type the enemy type is leader. We're going to say deal with the bandits. Talk to their leader. And that is done. Next stage we need is where the player is going to look for the crate hidden in the red forest. So we're going to add a new event here. We're going to go add quest marker, just use the normal one. Quest map pro demo quest. And in here we want to copy the quest data for stage 5. Copy the quest location. It is an area with also 2000 for the radius. So let's just put that in now. Location, paste. Demo quest for the name. Oops, area and 2000. So then we need to have the player interact with it to complete a task. So once again, we can reuse a task here. We could use interact. And we can go into here. We can set that to crate. Set our task to find the buried crate. And in here we'll say check the red forest. And then what we want to do is open up the crate, which is this one here, BP Quest Map Pro Demo Crate in the Demo Blueprints folder. And we just want to change this to activate. So let's get rid of this one here. So we want to go through, because this actor is destroyed when we interact with it, we need to make sure the player can't destroy this before they've got to this point in the quest. So we're going to give ourselves a bit of room here. And we're going to go get narrative component. And then from here, we're going to say completed. And we're going to look for has completed task in quest. So the way this one works is it goes through, you tell it what quest and what task needs to be completed. So we're going to select demo quest, and we're going to select the task kill enemy, because that is the task that needs to be completed just before they can do this. In here, we're going to write leader, and we need to then go through and add a branch. If the player has done that, we can continue. And then we're going to use another instance of get narrative component. I'm going to say complete narrative task. And we're going to say crate with the task type of interact. One little additional edit here, which is in the crate actor, we need to not have this check here. That was used for the prior quest system and is not valid anymore. So make sure you remove that out and just reconnect, and that should work fine. Now I've just realized that we've missed one step in the prior one. We need to actually go into the check for friendly function in here. And instead of start quest here, we want to instead drag in narrative, and we want to say complete narrative task. For this one, we want it to be kill enemy and set it to leader. Basically, we had set everything up except for the check to actually complete that task. That is all good though. We have done the crate now as well. So we have one more stage to set up, which is adding an event on here. We want to add a quest marker. This one is to get back to the beach. So we're going to jump in, grab our location data from stage 7, which is index 6, and we're going to see its location and 0. We're going to go in, add our data here, so paste the location, call it demo quest, leave it at location and 0. Just going to call this quest map pro demo quest, and we need to do one last task, which is to visit location. Now we're going to delete this quest state 7 here. I'll show you why in a second. So the location for this we're going to say is beach. I'm going to say return to the beach. And for task description, maybe now is a good time to learn how to fast travel. And we're going to drag off here and we're going to say succeed the quest. Now in this, we can add the clear quest marker so that once we complete the task, complete the quest, there is no longer a quest marker. And then the last thing we need to do is just open up the beach trigger, and we want to delete all this logic. Do the same thing, get narrative component, and we just want to complete the task. So complete narrative task. We're going to go to visit location and we're going to give the argument of beach. And if we save everything out, that should be everything done. So let's hit play and make sure everything's working. We can open the spawn container, that starts the first quest. We can see it's named demo quest. We go through and follow the trail all the way around there. Then we should hopefully get through here. I've gone through and tested and there were a couple of edits I had to make, which you guys have already seen. But other than that, I believe everything is working fine. So let's just walk through here. We should have the next quest update as we walk through. Yep, that's fine. Now the berries should update when we... Yep. Collecting them. And once we have 15 berries, it advances to the next stage. We can go over to the pallet, place them down, and now we have no quest marker at all. So we go to the bridge, and as we cross the bridge, we should see the next next quest, which is the attached actor one, where we attach the quest marker to a AI. So we should see that marker moving around as it is, and he's just stopped moving. There we go, he's moving on the map as well. Now once we get close to this AI, it should kill all of them. Yep. And now we have find the map, the crate. So let's follow along and get to the crate. Almost done. Now there are a couple of things missing. We don't have the advanced quest noises and stuff. You can add them into the events if you wanted, but obviously that's a bit different. That's not the main functionality we're looking at here. Interact with that, and now it's telling us to return to the beach. If we fast travel to the beach and then walk forward, there we go, quest succeeded. So that is everything you need to do to get narrative up and running. Narrative has a bunch of other features and systems that I haven't touched on here. As I said in the preamble of the video, the documentation's a bit lacking, but I would encourage you to jump into their Discord and have a look there, talk to the creator there if you can get a hold of him, and so on. Hopefully that's been helpful, and if you have any other suggestions or questions for integrations or anything else to do with QuestMap Pro, drop me an email or jump into the Discord and ask away. Cheers.